When you look at the last 3 years, a lot of institutional mechanisms have been put in place. First, the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship has come into being. The National Skill Development Agency, which has been supporting in terms of the policy making and in terms of making sure that the occupation standards, qualification packs, the labour market information system, National Skills Qualification Framework and a National Skills Research Organization, these are all being set up. Time will tell how they are functioning, but more importantly the institutional mechanism is in place. Within the National Skill Development Corporation, which is a public-private initiative itself, one is the 40 sector skill councils which are performing and defining the job roles, and it's an industry plus all the stakeholder participation. Standards of them which are published and then ratified by the National Skill Development Agency is being pushed towards adoption across all the training providers. We have funded a number of training providers for scale capability building, and more importantly the Pradhan Mantri Kaushalya Vikas Yojana, which has been funded entirely by the government, and the version 2.0 was launched last year, and now we are working on the next phase, is to make sure that the outcomes are measured and outcomes in terms of jobs or entrepreneurships. I think we have achieved, let us say, about 3.2 million last year, end of March 31st. Even though the target was higher, but at least 3.2 million who can be tracked. The second point is, have we got the wage parity right? The answer is clearly a no. Because I think because of the unorganized nature of the labor and the workforce, I think the wage and the appropriate wage for the right skill is still a lot to be done. Certification, assessment and recognition of prior learning is another initiative that is seeing its light of day, because when people have been doing vocational trades, how do you certify them so that again they are eligible for a higher skill? How do you give them the market access and the market connects through a set of skills? That is the next stage which we are on. Right. The journey is right, the outcomes are still very much less than what we desire.
Right. And if you were to highlight 3 challenges that you would face in, one is in executing or implementing what you've already set out on, and if you were to meet the larger job challenge of, let's say, 10 million jobs a year.
I think there are 2 major challenges. One is the supply side in terms of mobilizing the right person for the right trade to be trained on. We have just been pushing people to just chase the numbers. I don't think we should just chase the numbers. Numbers are an outcome, but the aptitude through advocacy and making sure a person who wants to be skilled or who is skilled is right for the job. That's the number one challenge. Second is the market connect in terms of the demand side mapping and making sure the supply to demand, the disconnect is completely eliminated. If you take a trading system or the National Stock Exchange or the Bombay Stock Exchange today, any person who wants to do a trade from any part of the country has equal access to information. The information asymmetry and removal will only come when supply to demand mismatch is completely eliminated. That is the second challenge, because you have to go to a taluka level, a district level, a city level or across the border level. So, I think mapping of the skills to the requirement in terms of supply. Simply saying I got a 3 lakh driver shortage is not a good statement. Show me where the jobs are. What is the wage I am going to get? Is it palatable to me to travel 20 hours a day? What are the kind of risks I am putting myself plus the others? I think we have to ask these very fundamental questions. So, this is the second challenge. Third is the linkage to track every person who has been skilled. Aadhaar gives us a unique platform for that. I think these are some things which I would see as the challenge.
Right. And personally, anything specific, I mean, have you set yourself a goal or a challenge in this context?
I think my whole personal goal is try out a few things. For example, I have initiated some activities in a village level, either in my own village or some of the villages where people are very, very committed to it.
So like a laboratory to learn from. Yeah.
Second is spend a lot of time on innovation, and scale up comes through innovation. You cannot get the multiplier effect by just saying that let us build more infrastructure. Third is looking at infrastructure that is existing and use those infrastructures rather than wasting your money and time on creating the infrastructure. I think the last but not the least is interconnecting a number of these things together for scale. If you do an innovation, I do an innovation, then how do you combine that for a common purpose? Let's share those innovations, and sharing and collaborating mechanisms. Some of the foundations on which I am there are helping me a lot. The other point which we have to address is the CSR funds towards skills. I think mobilization from the private sector is still a lot to be done. I think we must channelize through that. A lot of companies are doing on their own, but I think if they come through the National Skill Development Fund for a common purpose, again we can route better and then see the outcomes very clearly.
Right. Last question. I mean, creation of jobs, the skilling to match those jobs, and should eventually lead to economic growth. So, if I were to ask you the economic growth question now, what's your prognosis for the next year or so?
I think the numbers are very ambitious, not because we don't have the ability to grow. The domestic demand can enable us to grow. The global situation has to be understood in the context setting. It should be within the global context. Are there exportable jobs? Or the jobs that have been exported can be retained? These are some very fundamental questions. Second most important is no growth is possible unless the skills match the requirements for those growth related industries. If you take renewables, if you take healthcare, if you take retail, if you take manufacturing, if you take defense, all of these things require very high order of skills.